What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao with the news this Monday afternoon. Taiwan's 2024 presidential race is in its final week. With little time to persuade swing voters, the three candidates are starting to shape their closing pitches. John Van Triest has this election update.
On the campaign trail, there's still time for a few more photo ops, but not many. Saturday is Election Day, when Taiwan picks its next president. And so the three candidates are choosing their parting words before handing it over to voters. They've all picked some challenging terrain. As part of his final pitch, the Democratic Progressive Party's Lai Ching-te made 4 rapid-fire stops in different regions of the country Sunday. Though his party's held the presidency for 8 years, Lai's message is that he won't just bring 4 more years of the same. It's something he's especially tried to drive home in Taoyuan, in Taiwan's north. The city is home to many immigrants and second-generation Taiwanese, and is traditionally a tough place for his party to crack. Lai's 2 rivals have headed south to the city of Kaohsiung. It's a stronghold for Lai's party, but in 2018 it went sharply to the opposition, showing it is possible to flip. The Kuomintang's candidate, Ho Yo-i, has zoomed in on issues he thinks will win him points in this important city, especially the death penalty, something Taiwan's voters widely support. Ho has an important backer in this city, the man behind the historic 2018 flip, former mayor Han Kuo-yu. Though Han lost a recall vote, he still carries political weight and could boost opposition turnout. But this won't be a repeat of 2018. A new force, the Taiwan People's Party, has split the opposition. It has its own base, and its leaders are even questioning where Han's loyalties really lie. Taiwan's laws don't allow the release of any public polls so close to the election. So the only way to gauge the impact of these final appeals will be to see how people vote on Election Day. In these final days, the three candidates can only hope to sway the swayable, and that the number of undecided voters they can win over will be enough to push them over the finish line. Justin Wu and John Van Triest for TaiwanPlus.
And as campaigning draws to a close, the candidates' stances are under scrutiny, especially their policies involving China. With opposition parties talking about restarting trade negotiations with Beijing, activists are speaking out against that. Tiffany Wong reports.
坚持太阳花精神，坚持太阳花精神，反对重启服贸货贸，反对重启服贸货贸。
With Taiwan's presidential elections just days away, leaders of the 2014 student movement against the cross-strait trade agreement are warning Taiwan's next leader not to increase trade ties with China. It's been almost 10 years since the Sunflower Movement protesters first occupied Taiwan's legislative yuan for 23 days, effectively stopping the cross-strait service trade agreement from being implemented.
因为我们挡下服贸协议，所以今天我们的经济才没有随着中国经济的崩溃而崩坏，也才有机会布局全球，我们的经济自主才没有被中国掏空。
Now, China policy has been a hot topic during the presidential debates, with 2 of the presidential candidates, Ho Yo-i of the Kuomintang and Ko Wen-je of the Taiwan People's Party, saying that they would restart talks with China if elected. However, Lai Ching-te of the incumbent Democratic Progressive Party has said that he wants to diversify Taiwan's economic ties with other countries. And which direction the future of cross-strait trade relations takes is all up for Taiwan's voters to decide when they take to the polls. Chris Ma and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Home ownership is looking increasingly out of reach for Taiwan's young people. According to new data, just over 50% of mortgages in the first 3 quarters of 2023 went to people over the age of 40. The data also shows that housing prices in Taiwan have risen a whopping 66% over the past decade. The rising cost of living and the skyrocketing cost of housing have been key election issues, especially for the younger generation. Taiwan's military has reported 3 Chinese weather balloons floating near the country, with one of them passing directly over Taiwan. Jaime Ocon looks at what this latest activity means ahead of this weekend's presidential vote.
Chinese warplanes flying around Taiwan. It's almost a daily occurrence as Beijing ramps up military pressure on the island. On Monday, Taiwan's defense ministry reported one Chinese military aircraft flying in the country's ADIZ, or Air Defense Zone. This area doesn't belong to Taiwan, but it's used as a defensive buffer. But it also spotted 3 weather balloons, one flying directly over the country and violating Taiwan's airspace. It's not yet known what exactly these balloons are used for.
It's likely that maybe this has happened before, we just don't know, but in any case, the fact that we've had 7 of these balloons since the start of this year is very noticeable, very significant, especially given the fact that we're so close to Taiwan's election.
Taiwan's presidential elections are just 6 days away, and one of the biggest concerns is China's goal to rule the country by force if necessary. For several decades, China has modernized its armed forces and staged large-scale military exercises as a show of force. But despite those efforts, many analysts agree that invading Taiwan would be one of the most difficult operations in the world. China would need to transport over 100,000 soldiers in the first wave of an attack over the 100-kilometer Taiwan Strait. This kind of amphibious landing hasn't been done since World War II, when the U.S. and its allies landed on the beaches of Normandy.
诺曼底登陆只有几十公里，那台湾海峡就相对宽了很多。横渡台海的时候，那时候它的兵力是没有抵抗能力啊。只要我们有适当的一个防卫兵力的话，那它就是处于挨打的局面。
Taiwan has spent billions of dollars to manage this threat and boost its defense. In 2023, China sent a total of over 1,700 warplanes around Taiwan, in what analysts describe as a form of gray zone warfare. It's meant to try and blur the lines on what exactly is considered an act of war. With less than a week until Taiwan chooses its next leader, Beijing may have well decided to escalate its military pressure.
Beijing is attempting to kind of put pressure on Taiwan without using overt military means. But historically, when Beijing has attempted outright voter intimidation, that hasn't gone their way. I think they're attempting a new kind of more nuanced strategy to interfere in Taiwan's electoral process.
The balloon sightings around Taiwan could not have come at a more sensitive time. And while the outcome of Saturday's vote is far from certain, any attempt to intimidate voters here could well backfire on Beijing. Scott Huang and Hameo Khan for TaiwanPlus.
China has announced sanctions on 5 U.S. defense manufacturers in response to the latest round of arms sales to Taiwan. The U.S. is Taiwan's largest provider of weapons and defense systems. Last month, the State Department approved a $300 million equipment sale to help maintain Taiwan's tactical information systems. Beijing views arms sales as interference in its domestic affairs. North Korea is vowing to launch an immediate military strike if it's provoked, promising what they're calling a baptism of fire. The comments came from Kim Yo-jong, the sister of Kim Jong-un and one of the most powerful leaders in the regime. Tensions between Pyongyang and South Korea have been mounting. Seoul says the North fired hundreds of artillery shells near their disputed maritime border on Friday and Saturday. Teams of rescuers are still searching for survivors of an earthquake that rocked western Japan last Monday. Rosie Greninger has the story.
A week since a devastating earthquake struck Japan's west coast, a miracle. Rescuers pulling a woman in her 90s alive from the wreckage of her 2-story building. The woman responsive but suffering from hypothermia, transported to hospital from the town of Zuzu. Another woman in her 40s found dead at the same site. The death toll in the Ishikawa prefecture has reached at least 126 people, and thousands more are injured after the 7.6 magnitude earthquake rocked the country, destroying homes, blocking off towns, and snapping links to power and water.
県道の瓦礫がそのままですもんね。県道の瓦礫がそのままあって道路が使えない状態です。
Nearly 100,000 residents have been evacuated, but rescuers are still scouring affected areas, searching for more than 200 people still missing from the disaster. They're facing dangerous conditions with rain and cold fronts predicted, which could trigger further landslides. Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida vowed to take urgent measures to aid residents and rescuers.
例えば毛布や燃料のといった物資の確保などですね、対応を至急進めていきたいと考えています。現地と連携を取りながら必要な対応を取ってまいります。
And residents left homeless and without access to electricity or clean water say the aid can't come soon enough.
そんなに十分な物資は食べ物も来ていないですし、聞いたところによると珠洲では1日パン半分というふうなことも聞いてますので、もっともっと物資のを届けていただきたいな、食べ物もたくさんいただきたいなと思っています。
As the search enters its 8th day and with dangerous weather conditions outlooked, rescuers are racing against time to find survivors. Luffy Lin and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has told Arab leaders that Washington will not support the forced displacement of Palestinians from Gaza and the occupied West Bank. Blinken made the comments in Doha, where he's meeting Qatari officials.
Palestinian civilians must be able to return home as soon as conditions allow. They cannot, they must not be pressed to leave Gaza. We reject the statements by some Israeli ministers and lawmakers calling for a resettlement of Palestinians outside of Gaza.
Blinken is touring the region amid fears that the war on Gaza could lead to a broader regional conflict. Israel has waged a 3-month military campaign on Gaza following an attack by Hamas last October. Tens of thousands of people have been killed, many of them children. Bangladesh's Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has won a 5th term in office in an election boycotted by the opposition. Turnout was around 40%, according to the Election Commission, with reports of empty polling stations. The 76-year-old Hasina has been credited with turning the country's economy around, but her critics accuse her of human rights violations, crackdowns on free speech, and suppression of dissent. Cosplay is popular in East Asia, but now it's spreading to a city where you'd think people would just want to dress a little bit warmer. Louis Watt reports.
Not the type of padded winter clothing tourists usually wear in one of China's coldest cities. These visitors are braving sub-zero temperatures to bring cosplay to Harbin in the country's far northeast.
不冷吗？冷，冷，但是为了美，冷。
Cosplay or costume play, where fans role-play as characters from films, books and video games, is popular in China's big urban cities. But now it's spreading to this city, better known for its annual Festival of Ice Sculptures, and where temperatures can drop as low as -35 degrees Celsius. Harbin's former Russian Orthodox church is now the backdrop for photo shoots of more human angels.
有在那个各种媒体平台看到各种这种哈尔滨的宣传，还有文旅的这种相关的宣传，然后所以就是他们的宣传也有一定的作用，所以更想来看一看。
One makeup and photo shoot store estimates that hundreds of such businesses have opened in the last 3 months due to the demand.
觉得难的是，就是有的时候客人来了加不进去，拍不到。 客人这话就是一直在不断的增多。
Harbin's peak tourist season is its coldest, but after the Ice and Snow Festival packs up this year, the city may see tourists in all kinds of elaborate costumes, in warmer months too. Devon Tsai and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Runners in the 2024 Ginman Marathon dashed across the finish line on the race's second and final day. Over 2,800 people from 22 countries joined the event this year. The final leg saw runners cross the 6-kilometer-long bridge that links the 2 main islands of Taiwan's outlying Ginmen County. Ginmen sits just off the eastern coast of China and is home to several military bases. And this year, members of the Armed Forces Sea Dragon Frogmen Battalion joined the race. Thanks for joining us for What's Up Taiwan. You can find more of our reports online, on social media, or on our app. Finally, we've got more shots of Harbin's Winter Wonderland. I'm Eric Gao. Stay warm, and we'll see you next time.
Taiwan is voting for a future after President Tsai Ing-wen. TaiwanPlus has reporters on the ground.
We'll bring you a reaction as the results roll in.
The whole world is watching. We've got you covered.
Join us on election night for our live special, Taiwan Votes.